will call to order the July 21st Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission meeting. Jamie, do you want to do roll call?
Chair Steenblock.
Here.
Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Ramseth.
Here.
Commissioner Gary.
Here.
Commissioner Geyer.
Here.
Commissioner Steenblock. Commissioner Moorhead.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to number 3, which is approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do we have a motion?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and a second. Hearing any discussion? Yeah, if we can make one adjustment, I see we have our presenters for number 6 on the budget. If we can move that up to the beginning after open forum.
The discussion items, do discussion 6A and then 6B?
Yep,
Okay, is that?
after open forum. Are you okay with that?
That's fine.
Betty, are you okay with that from a second? Okay. Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. So then we will move on to open forum. I do see some folks here, I'm not sure. Thank you. All right, we have Jerry.
Good, works. Chair and commissioners, thank you. My name is Jerry Grutner, president of the Forest Lake Association. And I'm just here for a few minutes to talk to you because on the agenda is proposed 2022 budget for your discussion. And included in that is the Forest Lake Association request for monies for 2022. If you recall, back in April, I came in front of the commission to have this discussion about the budget for 2021. And at that time, you know, what I was trying to convey to everyone is that, you know, for the last 10 years, the city has contributed some amount of money, generally down, it started at, you know, in the 50,000, then went to 55,000, went to 60,000. And so it's been in that same range. Last fall, I had several conversations with City Council. In fact, was on a couple of their council meetings. And at, I think it was the October-November council meeting, the council voted to increase the budget for 2021 for the Forest Lake from the $62,000 that was originally budgeted for 2021. It took it to $72,000. That was approved by City Council. So for 2021, it's our expectation that we'll be able to fund $72,000 from the Surface Water Management Fund towards Forest Lake. Now, in the discussion relative to 2022 and in the draft budget I sent to you back in April, you notice that I kept the same amount of money for 2022, a request of $72,000 again. What is in front of you in your agenda for tonight, it looks like now it's about a $63,000 budget for Forest Lake. So I'm going to ask you to kind of give that some consideration, that at least we should be funded at the same level in 2022 as in 2021. You know, our needs are still the same. In fact, they're increasing. Our expenditure for the lake is not changing. If anything, it continues to go up. And an interesting fact for you that you can maybe just put in the back of your hat for park planning and so forth is I sent a letter to the Downtown Redevelopment Committee about the number of boats that come into Lakeside Park and are launched. And based upon the watercraft inspectors' reports, we can verify that 3,261 boats were launched at Lakeside Park last year in 2020. So that's just at the one launch. So Forest Lake remains the largest park in City of Forest Lake. So anyways, I'm just going to ask you to take that $63,000 back up to $72,000, which is what the commitment was for 2021. so that we at least can stay on par with where we were, so.
Thank you.
And I will be here if anything comes up during that agenda discussion.
Perfect,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, next we have is it Diane Froelker?
Good evening. I'm Diane Froelker, and I'm one of the neighbors of North Shore Circle Park. I live on the east side, and my neighbor Connie lives on the west side. So we just have some concerns and questions about the development of the park. I'm kind of concerned about putting in a cement ramp. I'm wondering if what's going to keep people from launching boats there and not just canoes. And right now, people do carry their canoes, carry their kayaks from the road without a ramp. So I don't see why the need for the ramp. Plus, I thought we were trying to keep the runoff off the road from going into the lake, and you think, what's gonna keep the runoff from going right down the ramp into the lake? Also, the retention pond, is that gonna be treated for mosquitoes? Or is it just gonna be, a stagnant pond? And we don't need any more mosquitoes. Also, that area, there's a sign now that says no motorized vehicles in the park. And it's like a highway in the winter with snowmobiles and four-wheelers. They don't pay any attention to the sign. So are they gonna use that cement ramp now to get onto the lake? So those are my concerns. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then next on the list we have Al, is it Lumen? Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Lumen. I live directly across from the park. And most of the concerns Diane stated quite well already. And yeah, the main concern is the ATV and snowmobile traffic through there. You better have something to stop it if you're planning on having a nice park there. I mean, with the improvements there. And an 8-foot wide paved launch, again, I think the runoff will be significant in there. One of the old neighbors had told me once they had, he and a couple other guys, they put a drain tile through that pond to keep the water out already, so that might be encountered when they do develop that. I'm not sure how deep or anything about it, but he always talked about that. So, because the water does collect about right where that retention area is designated. Another concern is there are some kids who do use that for playing ball, especially football. In the football season, they come down there quite a bit. So otherwise, that's about all the concerns I have about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, that takes care of our list for open forum. So if we move the discussion 6A up, we have Tim Olson for that piece.
Yeah, I'll just introduce this quick here. So we're going to be on discussion 6A, North Shore Circle Park Stormwater Management Considerations. So Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, for this agenda item tonight, I will turn it over here shortly to Bolton and Mank. We have two representatives, Ryan Goodman, our city engineer, and Tim Olson, our water resources engineer. And just tonight, we wanted to get this, start the process of this conversation with the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, given that we do have two parcels of parkland on North Shore Circle. We got Park East and West. And just for reference, I'll bring up the picture just so you guys are all aware of what we're looking at here. So here we have the two different parcels. The one listed number 1 is our current open space that we've talked about quite significantly with the Parks Commission. It's just a mowed area with a little area to access the lake. And then the second parcel, number 2, is parkland that's pretty wooded and really not currently used as a park use. So with that being said, again, this is just the start of a conversation and process. Tonight, Bolton and Mank are just starting here with the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission and really just looking to see if there's interest in continuing this conversation to use these parks for some stormwater management requirements that are needed as part of an upcoming street improvement project. So again, this is very preliminary tonight. These are first draft concepts, and again, your role is to see if there's interest to continue the conversation and potentially use these parks for these stormwater management pieces. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Tim, and thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioner members. Ryan Goodman, City Engineer. Just to give you, I'll give you some background why we're here tonight and what's leading up to a 2022 street and utility improvement project in this neighborhood. We're coming to you guys first and early because this project will trigger watershed rules and requirements, and we need to kind of know where we're going to deal with the stormwater requirements of the project. And until we can get to that point, then upon that, we'll then start scheduling public neighborhood engagement meetings too with this project. But the reason that we're here and what work needs to be done is the sanitary sewer system in this area needs a lot of correctional work, and it's going to require full depth excavation to access that stuff and replace what's needed in this area. So back in 2017-18, the 2 lift stations in this area were designated to be reconstructed, but then the main line was going to be left in place. But as we continued to explore the sanitary main line and the roadway in this area, we found huge deficiencies that needed major correction, such as we would pop one manhole, it would be dry. We'd pop the next one downstream, it would be full of liquid. Then we'd pop the next one, it'd be dry. Next 2 would be full of liquid. Thus, there's a lot of sags in the line. When we have issues like that, that could potentially lead to backups in homes. So it's something then we started exploring even further in this neighborhood and worked our footprint up to Hayward. We found then a bunch of home services that are ranging anywhere from 2 feet of cover to 4 feet of cover. And, you know, it's so shallow that every year they put hay over those service lines to try to prevent any freezing. But ultimately it brings issues to public works and unneeded maintenance. But knowing that the lift stations need to be needed, and when we found all these issues with the mainline sewer that was installed in this area, we knew we couldn't tackle that with the budget that we had in 17-18. Thus, we programmed it for this year, and we were fortunate enough to obtain some bonding money to go towards some of our sanitary sewer improvements from the state. And then it also aligns perfectly with the I&I grant that we're working through with Met Council that will get credit back at a certain percent of the work that will be completed in this area. But with that being said, and leading up to the street project, we will trigger the full permit of the watershed rules and requirements. Thus, we're going to have to find places to treat the stormwater. Everything that you see tonight was basically me giving Tim, you got 2 days to give me something so we can just verbally talk about it. You know, basically all that we're asking here tonight is the nod and permission to explore these properties for stormwater management. You know, it might be a bioretention pond, could be a dry or a wet pond, it could be a rain garden, but just an area that we're, you know, have permission to spend time and energy to explore these areas. All the improvements were just something to get you guys thinking of what you could ultimately do with this land, whether some of it, you know, we kind of finalize now through this process of what you ultimately might see there, because we could easily handle the grading with the street project because we're gonna have heavy equipment there already. But with an improved road and all the work that we're gonna do parallel to these sites, these are easy grant applications in the future to do enhancements of stuff that you see on here. Yeah, my bad. You know, I told Tim to show a pathway, you know, just to invite conversation. There's no way we would construct a 8-foot paved direct route right down the lake. I mean, who knows what we would attract with something that wide and smooth, you know, like just like we do with roads. The better we build a road, we attract things that we necessarily didn't want, you know. So that obviously we'll go through a whole design process with you guys on what would eventually be there. But ultimately tonight, we're just asking permission to pursue stormwater treatment in this area. And with that, I'll kick it over to Tim, who's the stormwater expert and will be leading the stormwater design on this project.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Commission and Chair, for the invite tonight to speak. And thanks, Ryan, for that introduction. You know, I think that there's a lot of, not necessarily variability, but there's a lot of flexibility in what could be done here. You know, as we explore the neighborhood and explore opportunities for stormwater management to meet the watershed district requirements, We're trying to identify some low-hanging fruit, at least at the beginning. And the park space itself really lends itself for stormwater management because we can actually get water to it. As Ryan mentioned, an 8-foot wide paved path is really on here for scale. That's not something that we would necessarily propose long-term, but having some access to the lake for canoe and kayak launch, I think would be a good idea. We can do things like meander that path or make it have it be a wood chip path or even a turf path to discourage other motorized vehicles from going down to the lake, of course. Things like the pollinator garden and native plantings and things like that is really just more of an effective use of the vegetation that's out there now. I would propose here this bioretention area to be dry, so it would have drain tile in it. We will be forcing stormwater to come directly to the park on purpose, but that's for the sake of treating that stormwater as it isn't treated today. And so providing an opportunity for that water to filter through some sediment, have some nutrients and other sediment be captured by the plant material, and then have a drain tile in that so it stayed nice and dry to deter mosquitoes from breeding there. That certainly is something that's on our radar. In some initial conversations with the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, they were very interested in doing a lakeshore education project here too, lakeshore restoration education project. I think with placement of educational signage to talk about the importance of pollinator habitat and the importance of low-mow fescues that would belong in shady areas, maybe looking at native plantings and why those are important. We'd see this being a nice educational opportunity too for park users. I want to make sure that we stress too here that park programming is obviously very important. And we're not proposing to take away park space that would otherwise be used by the neighborhood for other programming. This just happens to be one of those spots that's kind of low-hanging fruit from a stormwater perspective. We think that this concept would bode quite well for stormwater management and potentially for public education too. Can we answer any questions on this one before we talk about the other park that's to the north?
So do you have any idea of the volume of water that would come off the road into the bioretention area?
We do have an idea of what that volume would look like. I don't have that number off the top of my head today, but the footprint that you see here would actually include, since we're going to be in the roadway anyway, would include some redirection of water. We're trying to actually force as much stormwater to these stormwater features as possible. That makes them a lot more economically feasible, plus our treatment value goes way up too. So yes, there will be a volume of water that will be purposefully concentrated to this location, likely via curb and gutter, maybe even some storm sewer potentially too. We're working through some of those details now, but we might as well be forthcoming and honest about that. And the point here then is to capture that stormwater and really treat it before it gets to the lake to improve that water quality.
So there's going to be gutters, curbs and gutters there, so a curb cut to...
All those answers we don't know yet. So just to give you a little more background, the existing area, this area was obviously developed before any rules and requirements existed. So none of the water or drainage or runoff is treated currently, right? So anything that we come in and do, we obviously have to fulfill the watershed rules and requirements. Maybe it's here, maybe it's over there or up the road further, right? That's the process we're gonna have to work through, but we're trying to isolate some of those areas that we could focus on a little more. To date, what we've completed is all the preliminary topo survey out in this neighborhood. So we got all the survey shots. We've been able to cut cross sections and start developing some existing planning profiles to know where our grades are and elevations kind of all play into. And then some areas will need curb and gutter just to be able to tie in the elevations of a driveway that come in very steep and this side comes down. Our goal is to try to minimize the amount of curb and gutter as much as possible and, continue the natural drainage that does exist out there with underground piping maybe to bring it to certain locations. Any existing road culverts that exist out there today obviously are going to have to be removed and replaced. A lot of that stuff is corrugated metal pipe, so it's already even rusted almost through. We replace that with RCP pipe. It's not our intention to widen the road at all because of the footprint. The more impervious area we developed, the bigger the stormwater treatments that would have to meet the rules and requirements of the watershed district. So trying to balance what we need to do there on the roadway improvements, but ultimately we need to get down to the sanitary sewer and fix all that. And what we're doing is we're starting out at the peninsula, relaying gravity backwards, right now. And then that way we know we're gonna be able to pick up every service as we come through. And we're removing 2 lift stations and replacing them with 1. So our operation and maintenance on the lift station side of thing is cut in half. But it then allows us for, to alleviate all those issues with the depth of services and then the sags in the line too.
Great, thank you, that's helpful.
Any other questions?
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's talk about the other area then here too. There's a parcel kind of north and east of North Shore Circle Park that is currently dedicated as park space from what we see in the parcel maps. It's a very heavily wooded lot, but also offers another opportunity to potentially bring stormwater to the area and create this park space. Again, trail alignments, trail material, that type of stuff is highly, flexible in terms of the final design. But what we're seeing here too, if we did try to force stormwater into this area and for treatment prior to discharging to the lake, and really improving that lake water quality, we'd want to keep these features as close to the road as possible. If there was a desire to maybe restore some of the understory or the vegetation, the ground cover in this area, maybe some canopy thinning would be helpful to try and get some more sunlight penetration down to the ground. But the concept here would be to keep as many trees as possible, leave this as a very heavily wooded area, but potentially introduce some park spaces that could be a little more usable, even surrounding these stormwater features. And also another great opportunity to do a lakeshore restoration project. So not a whole lot different here compared to the other one. And, again, the vegetation selections and all of those things are coming much later on, but another opportunity potentially to not have to acquire land and use it to treat stormwater before going into the lake.
So you're recommending or you're looking at using both sites, not one or the other?
That's correct.
And are you thinking on the second one, same strategy as that bow retention area would be dry and the path we could readjust?
Absolutely.
Well, okay.
Yep, absolutely. The trouble here is that the soils are really clayey, and so water doesn't soak through them very quickly. And also the water table is really high because the lake is right there. So that really forces our hand in a lot of ways to make sure that this is more of a filter with a drain tile as opposed to an infiltration feature or a wet pond.
Any other questions?
I'm wondering if the people who spoke earlier, does this help you in understanding?
Sounds good that there's gonna be drain tile and it's gonna go into the sewer, mosquito haven.
I think it's really easy to see a blue area on a map and think open water. And we try and be careful with colors, but with the design and just the site conditions here, there's really no other way to do it. It has to have a drain tile, so it will stay dry.
I think from my perspective, I think it is a good opportunity to take a look at it. I would, and Ryan, you already mentioned doing this, but I do think it's important to have some neighborhood interaction in that area and get some feedback. I think we could potentially look at the recreational space and make some determinations as to what we could put there, whether it be benches or I don't know what else, but it gives us an opportunity down the road to look at how we utilize that space. So from my perspective, I'm comfortable with it and would like to have them explore it as long as we take into consideration some of the feedback we received tonight. And then have the opportunity for the neighbors in that area to. Right.
So also just let you guys kind of know where we are in the timeline of this. This is our first discussion outside of the city council and city staff about, this project moving forward. Elected officials have expected, and we expect too, that we'll be having public engagement meetings once we get more information to be able to talk about the project. And some of these locations are going to require one-on-one individual meetings too. we're treating this as a major project, and we'll go through the same process that we did like on 15th Street when we did that. You know, we had several engagement meetings, but we also met one-on-one with every single business owner. So knowing the impacts, you know, someday we'll get to the improvements, right? But we're gonna have to go through a phase of construction. So we're gonna have to talk about that with the property owners on how we're gonna stage this project as well, because I mean, our minimum depth that we're going down to fix sewer is 8 feet. So we'll start, you know, 8 feet at the shallow manhole, and as we work our way gravity-wise out there to the new lift station, we might be 25 feet at the lift station. The lift station is gonna be located outside of any of these homes, but there is gonna be some critical staging for not only the residents. You know, we right now don't know if somebody lives in that neighborhood that might be handicap impaired. We don't know if there's some large events that we might have to work around. And then we have to obviously work with our fire chief and police chief to maintain emergency access during something like this too. So this isn't something little, you know, we're just having one meeting and we won't be back. You know, anything that's gonna happen in your park space, you guys will be very closely engaged. Obviously, I talk with Jamie every Wednesday at a minimum. So this will, you know, continue here on out, so.
Anybody else have comments or concerns or
I
thoughts?
agree, it's really worth pursuing, taking a look, and let's see where this goes, because we've not known quite what to do with some of this land, and some of this looks like a good idea as long as we take into account
And
neighborhood.
just for your information too, and anybody that might be watching or in the audience, you know, one of our next steps though is to obtain soil borings. So there would be a truck going out there to take soil borings in the roadway and in areas that we potentially know we might have stormwater management. So that doesn't mean anything's been designed. We need that information to be able to design to it. So, you know, you see a big truck like, oh, they already made their decision, right? That's not the case. We just need to gather geotechnical information. You know, one concern with the sanitary sewer, the stable ground we put on it, we might have to do a lot of improved pipe foundation to set that pipe. Worst case scenario, we might even have to set some of the pipe on piles because the soils are sort of so poor in that area. So we just don't know that until we gather that geotechnical information too, so.
Comments or thoughts?
It makes sense to do that.
It sounds like we are all in favor of you moving forward, and we'll continue to monitor and work together as we go through the process.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's open forum. No, it's outside of open forum. All right, so the next on the agenda is park event permit application for the tracker boat.
Chair, did you want to finish the other discussion item?
Oh, I'm
First?
sorry.
That's
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I do. I
Okay,
missed that one
great.
completely. We've
That's
got discussion 6B, which is the 2022 budget.
All right, so Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, included in your packet is a budget report for several of the budgets that fall under the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. You'll see on the report, I provided the 2020, 2021 budget and activity, and then our 2022 requested. I did go through and fill in some of the 2022 requested to facilitate the conversation tonight. So really looking to provide an opportunity for you for discussion amongst the commissioners if there's anything you'd like to see different, added. It's an opportunity to weigh in on some budget conversation for 2022. So there are a couple new things this year that I'll highlight as we go through this, but the primary budgets that we're going to be looking at briefly tonight, Parks programs, which is pretty much our operational, our community events, all the activities that we do. So that's the Parks programs budget we are responsible for. I did include the golf course, that is also falls under Parks. I did include a few line items for park maintenance. New this year is the senior center. We'll talk about that when we get there, and our park dedication fund. And then lastly, I did include new also this year, the lake budget request. So just a quick note as we go through this tonight, I included what is relevant for us to review and discuss. There's several other line items in our budget that we don't have budget dollars accounted for, or it's, human resources related that we don't have to weigh in on. So you are seeing a little bit of a condensed budget, so you can see the specific line items that are relevant and for your input and discussion. So that's why some of this is kind of broken down, so we didn't have a 10-page budget where most of it wasn't needed. So with that being said, we'll start with the Parks Programs budget. This is the one that we utilize the most. The first portion, where the section with state grants down to local government grants, that's any projected revenue that we have. So as you'll see here, we do collect revenue for picnic shelters and community garden rentals. We have arts in the park vendor fees, and park user fees is a new line item. What you see here for this revenue is pretty standard. I did want to make one note. I did increase our revenue for arts in the park. I think once we start talking about the fee schedule, right now we charge $200 for a full season for a food truck, and I think that fee breaks down to just being, a few dollars per day. And I think we have an opportunity to look at our fee structure for arts in the park vendors. So I think we could potentially generate a little more revenue from that source. Not significant, but I think we should look at that. And then the park user fees is a line item for new with the field facilities. So that was some of the revenue that came in for utilizing our Fenway Fields and our agreement. So that is where that revenue came in there. And then just from a Parks Programs, the expense side of things, I'm just going to quickly go through some of this, and then we'll take it budget by budget if you guys have any thoughts. Pretty basic. Board member wages remains the same. One thing I did want to note, part-time wages, I did up that just a little bit. There's a lot of uncertainty about what the minimum wage might be for 2022. So bumping it up just a couple $1,000s gives us some room to adjust accordingly if needed with part-time wages. So I feel comfortable with operating in the $24,000. And that includes our rink attendants, our park rangers in the summer, and then we do have one extra park seasonal throughout the summer months to help with community events. So that is what the part-time wages would cover. And then you have a long list of just kind of the miscellaneous operating, office supplies, operating supplies. I really didn't make any significant changes there. We've been operating just fine with what we've been having, so nothing notable. I did want to note professional services. I did put in $15,000 as a placeholder in the event that we need any contracted services with any of the management and maintenance at Fenway Fields or any of our athletic facilities as we start to be more involved in that process. So if there's any need for staffing out there to help with the tournament, if there's other services needed regarding field utilization reporting and helping with the field scheduling. So that is what's in there right now, which is offset by that revenue coming in. So it's budget neutral. And just kind of see if there's anything else notable in the Parks Programs. I did increase the entertainment budget, so the Parks Programs / entertainment just by $2,000. The fireworks for the 4th of July are funded out of here, and that got bumped up from $10,000 to $12,000. So that allows us to keep our operating budget for our arts in the park and our community events. And I also know that we have interest in a winter event, so just want to make sure we have a little extra budget to work with. So just a $2,000 increase for that line item. And with that, that is the Parks Programs budget. I know a couple years ago we talked about resources and technology were a couple key items for the budget request. So we've been able to add part-time resources for staffing, which you don't see. It's listed in, listed in a different budget or full-time wages, but we have that covered, and technology was the only other component. And I think we have some room in like a miscellaneous budget for some technology. So in short, pretty basic, not any significant changes recommended on my end, unless there's anything you guys think needs, to look at different outside of this, but really trying to keep the budget as similar to 2021 as possible with no other significant asks. Any questions or comments on the parks programs budget. Anything else you'd like to see?
You answered my questions.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions on that section?
All right, we'll jump. Oh, go ahead. Did you have a question?
Well, you didn't fill in any summaries here of the totals. And as I was talking to Terry, having assets and liabilities on the same line, you know, revenue and debits and credits on the same line is confusing to me, but that's the way it goes. So, but at any rate, do you know what we have, what we're looking at for this, for the
total amount? I can pull that up in a minute here when we go through these. I should be able to get you a total. You want just a total operating budget?
Yeah.
Okay, I should be able to grab that and just when we get through the budgets.
Fine.
Jimmy, I think another request was to kind of understand for 2021, what our budget was, what we spent and what we have left. So maybe a separate.
Sure, and that's this report. So there's a column, 2021 activity through July 31st is listed there. So that's, we have the 2021 budget and then where the current activity is. So it kind of gives you at least that information, but I know you want to know probably percentages remaining. But the
Right, I don't see any totals.
You want the totals.
totals, got
It's
it.
the
Okay.
same.
We need things simple. Here's our bottom line.
Sure, I can get that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the golf course budget, again, I just have 2 line items here as things have changed with our contract. We did keep repair and maintenance supplies for the golf course, so that would be if city staff need to do anything or need to purchase anything. It's just a little budget to give us that opportunity if we need to. An example would be the city was able to help repair the bunkers, so we, I think, purchase sand or what have you. So it just gives us some funding if the city would need it. Otherwise, the contract services, I put in $15,000 right now. That would be if we, at the end of 2022, for some golf management, guaranteed the $50,000 net profit. And if, let's say they end up with $40,000 net profit, the city would owe them the $10,000 difference. We could potentially change this. I feel comfortable with that amount. And if anything, we might not need it all, and that's a good thing. So I'm hoping that's where we're trending with that. I think it's a good budgeted amount. And like I said, hopefully we won't need to have all that as an expense.
Jamie, do you remember where we landed last year? I know it was kind of an abnormal year in our first year, but with the 50,000 versus what we ended up paying.
It was under 13,000 that we paid. I believe it was a little over 12.
Okay.
And just got new reporting yesterday, and I think we're on track for that, if not better, right now through end of June. And July is so far on track for one of the busiest months they've had. So it's right now we're at that same spot as where we ended last year. So hopefully we can continue to move forward positively there.
And you touched on one of the questions, but okay, so we have 1513 for the activity through July 31st. Where does the bunker, my question was, where do the bunker repairs fall? And that doesn't seem like enough money, but maybe it is.
Yeah, I think it was just sand and staff time,
Okay.
so minimal
Okay.
expense. So that's why we kept a little bit in there, just if there would be something that the city, is able to take care of.
Okay, all right. Any other questions on that? I do have an email from Karen Moorhead. She couldn't be here, so when we get done, I want to read that, but I'll wait until we're done.
Okay.
Because I think she had a couple of questions as well.
Sure.
Anybody else have questions on the golf course? Nope. Okay.
All right, so then just going into the park maintenance, sorry about that. Park maintenance is primarily managed, this budget's primarily managed by our Public Works Director, but we do take a look at it and can provide some comment on basically the repair and maintenance and equipment for any improvements we need at our city parks. So the park user fees, that again is, we put some of that revenue in under park maintenance, so that if the city staff need to go out and fix any fields or anything like that, there's some of that revenue dedicated there, but generally it all balances out anyhow. But so operating supplies, $36,500, that's the same as the last few years. Repair and maintenance for subcontractors, our public works director says if he needs to contract something out, that's where he puts that expense. What's most important for Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission is the repair and maintenance for improvements. As you can see, the last few years, we've budgeted $50,000 and this is for anything like broken playground equipment. We need new benches, new tables, replacement parts. And this is also where we look August or September if there's any fund balance left where we can maybe purchase a small piece of equipment or some other accessories for parks. So that $50,000 is what we budget annually, so no changes there. I think that's been a good amount and working well for managing throughout the summer and then giving us the opportunity to look at something in the fall. And again, repair and maintenance equipment, he's just recommending the $10,000 again for that. So just an opportunity if you feel different on the repair and maintenance. I think, again, keeping everything pretty similar to last year.
In conjunction with your comment at the end of the year, I think at some point, sooner rather than later, I'd like us to potentially start talking about where we would want to invest that. Last year, we did the park, why can't I think of the name of it?
Bay Park.
Bay Park, thank you. And I know this year we had somebody come from Clear Lake. So maybe we could start thinking about sooner where we would potentially invest that to do a park maintenance improvement where we could buy the equipment this fall.
Yeah, that sounds good. And that's why you do see
If we could put that on a future agenda item here.
So this is the line item where the improvements that we've gotten input on and lists for and on our plans, this is where all of that would come from, this line item.
Correct. Anything outside of capital improvements. So repairs to broken equipment, new swings.
But a new playground, so that would come from here?
That would be capital. We've looked at, like, let's say at the end of the year, we've got $15,000 left. It's a good opportunity not to spend down the budget and spend the dollars down, but if we know for the next park season, we need 6 more swings in inventory, then we're ready in the spring and we can pull them off a shelf and put them into the parks. So using that opportunity, or like buying a handicap accessible swing that might cost $1,000 where we normally wouldn't just go purchase that, but ways we can use that to make some little improvements for the next season. So
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It's the first time I've seen the budget, so I might have silly questions.
that's okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on to the senior center.
All right, so senior center budget, this is new. It's new to myself and the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, so this is probably the first time everyone's seen a senior center budget. We've always had a budget, but with operations used to run under Forest Lake Seniors, Inc., and it's now through the city. This is a little more detailed out compared to what it was in the past. So I have built this out, made some projections here. The first portion, the revenue, one key item is we do have LATV rents some space at the senior center, so that rental coming in is the $16,000 is rent on an annual basis. So that's revenue that comes in for the senior center. And then the senior center will collect membership fees. So we projected we'll get $4,000 in revenue for that. And I just put in a budget of $500 for any miscellaneous donations or contributions that may come in for next year. As you can see, we did get $326 in so far in 2021. Part-time wages, we are in the process, we're hiring a part-time senior center coordinator, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit, but that would be a part-time position. And then again, just similar to the parks programs budget, just some office supplies, operating supplies, the telephone, the contract services at $16,000. We're, as a city, trying to figure out, the maintenance plan. We've had the maintenance contracted out in the past, so that number may or may not go down a little bit. We're working through the building maintenance component. And again, just some money for any other improvements for the building or the senior center. And then also just at the bottom here, senior center entertainment, just some funds for them for some programs and activities. So again, this is new. It's an opportunity to get you engaged and see if you have any preliminary thoughts. I think it is going to take one good year to figure out what the actuals are going to be as we're starting to transition this to the city. We've started that process this year, so we're getting an idea. If you can see here in the 2021 year-to-date column, we're starting to fill in as expenses are coming in. But I think it is going to take just a full year to really know what our actual budget should be. So I think we have numbers that will be good to work with and make sure we have enough funds to cover any needs that may come up.
This is one where I have some dumb questions.
That's okay.
It's new to me, but, okay, so help me understand what engineering charges are. What is
That would be if we needed to work with our city engineer for any consult or anything like that.
Okay.
I don't know yet if we're going to need to do that with the senior center. I don't anticipate it, so I did leave that one blank there.
And then, this is a little thing, but why do we have a piece for the telephone for the senior center? Why don't they just fall under the city umbrella of phones? Why is it a line item separate?
So currently, it's still with CenturyLink, which was what was set up with the Forest Lake Seniors Inc. So we are in part of the transition this year, looking into other options with them, or either tying into the city. I know there's some IT technical components to that, or even just a better provider or lower cost for the senior center. So we are exploring that currently right now to find a more cost-effective way, and even if it's tying into the city. But as we've had to transition out of 2020 and the city taking over this year, there's a lot of logistical components that we're working through. And we will get an update on some of that later. So hopefully we can reduce that cost and bring that down.
Is that the same for insurance as well, potentially falling under that umbrella, or is that a separate?
That insurance, I would have to verify, but yeah, do you know what that one is?
Yeah, if that's liability or. If that's liability coverage, workers' comp coverage, fire, et cetera, that will go away. That'll be under the city's umbrella.
Okay.
But I think you bring up a good point too. Like previously, the senior center operating, all the utilities have gone away, so that expense is gone. That it's a city building, so we are going through that list of how do we reduce cost and what can be minimized or reduced or eliminated under city operations.
Okay.
Do we know if usage of the senior center has returned to what it was pre-quarantine and COVID?
We are reopened right now, and people are starting to come back in, and we will have a pretty good update on that later from Jill here, who's been helping with the senior center. But we are optimistic, and I think people are excited to be back, and I think we're looking forward to retaining or getting back to the numbers that we were at, and hopefully expanding our programs and activities to attract even more.
I see under repairs and maintenance, I don't know if this falls here, but as long as we're discussing the senior center, I'm going to bring it up now. I did receive a call from a senior center member who had some concerns about the toilets in the facility, that they are not handicapped accessible height toilets. So if that's something we could address with the budget.
How do you want to do that? Yeah.
Why are you all, what?
So Jill from Jill Green here has been working with the city part-time employee for helping with transitioning the senior center. So she's happy to share an update on that quick. And she'll tell you about the maintenance and the toilets.
So the toilets were brought to my concern, and there's a program with the Lions Club that each member of the Lions gets $1,000 to put towards a cause that they choose. So we did receive $1,000 to replace some of the toilets.
You have not received the $1,000 yet.
No, it's in the mail, or that's what I was told yesterday.
So the toilet situation will be addressed and
Okay.
it'll be a business, maintenance item we'll take care of.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. And then, I think, again, this is a learning opportunity for me, so I'm just gonna, as long as we're talking about it. Licenses and permits, is that another piece that would be looked at? Or what are we budgeting there for, is that?
So a little bit of a budget there if there's some unknowns. We've been getting a few things from the state that we're working through on if we need certain licenses for if we're doing food and beverage, or, you know, they were operating in
Okay.
use of the kitchen and things like that. So
Okay.
just a little bit in case we have any minor licenses that we have to obtain if there's food and beverage or anything along those lines. So just a little bit so we at least have something available if needed.
Okay, thank you. I'm done with my questions now. Anybody else have senior center questions? Done. Jason? No? All right, thank you.
All right, so moving on to park dedication. So park dedication fund is where we collect the fees for any park developments. So we charge the $2,500 per unit, as you guys know. And so we have to make some revenue projections annually. So what you see here, park dedication fees, every year we make some projections based on what developments we think, you know, might be happening or what we might see come through. Based on conversations with our zoning administrator, we budgeted $75,000 for this year. Currently have collected $2,500, and we might have one more come through for this year. But there's quite a few projects that are being worked on as we speak. So we're budgeting for revenue, $200,000 for next year is a recommendation of a good amount for revenue projections. We also have, part of this is our Veterans Memorial Program. It's run through this park dedication account, but it's a restricted cash account, so it's not reflected in what we have available for our park improvements. But basically what happens is the city's the fiscal agent for that program, so anytime people want to purchase a paver, they pay the city, and then the city will pay the invoice we get from the engravers when they make the pavers. That revenue goes into a restricted cash account. So it's kind of irrelevant here, but it just shows that we are collecting some revenue, but we also have an expense that goes out, and it's dedicated for that program. So we need to still talk about capital for 2022, and don't know if we're going to get to the Belts project or where we're going to end up with that. So I don't have anything in yet for the expense side of things. I know it was asked to see what our current park dedication fund balance is. I can pull that up, but we have about $550,000 starting effective currently for our park dedication fund balance. So the one thing I do need to add into here is what we think we're going to expense out in 2022 with a capital project. So that is still something to talk about and tonight if anyone has any thoughts on that, but I know we need to really get into that capital piece of what project we'll want to tackle in 2022. So I guess that's all I have on the budget for park dedication.
If we have $550,000, why wouldn't we be talking about starting anything this year? Is it?
We certainly can. I know we have the Belts master plan. I think it's just that's what we need to start talking about if we get the Belts master plan going again. The city's also been working on 10-year financial planning and strategic planning with council. So just want to make sure we know what funds we have, because what generally happens is if we do one big project, if we go for the current fund balance, we could buy the building for Belts Park and be back to a zero fund balance, and then you're not planning out for future things. So we certainly have money to do something, but trying to align it with more of the strategic plan of a 10-year financial plan for parks, so that we know if we spend this $550,000 for the building restroom facility at Belts Park and we're down to $0, you know, where do we go from there and what's that going to look like?
Okay. But we also don't want to nickel and dime this fund, do lots of little things.
No.
Leave a balance and then not be able to do our big things.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think that's a good August agenda item to really dig into I think priority has been the Belts Park Master Plan, and we've looked at that. It's a it's an expensive project, so we can break that down into phases and see where that aligns.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Tim did? Yeah.
So I guess I was just kind of curious, speaking of Belts Park, where are we at as far as that project has there been a drawing all set? Are we still getting feedback from the community, or where are we at?
We have pretty much left it where, in 2019, right before we left it at, we need to figure out the parking agreement with St. Peter's, need to re-engage that conversation, and a lot of it was just figuring out funding for it, because if we do a phased project, do we want to do it in one phase, 2 phases, 3 phases? Do we have funding to support the whole project, and what would that look like? So I think it's an appropriate time to bring that back up now that we do have funds available and resources to do that. So I think that would be a good time to bring that up.
Okay. And then the other question, and I don't know if this has been addressed in the last couple of meetings, but there isn't any park dedication money charged or collected for storage units. Is that correct?
I don't think we have that. Are you talking about a specific project?
Well,
Or the commercial piece, is that what you're referring to? Commercial.
I guess that I knew we collected the $2,500 for residential, and there's a collection, for commercial. But it seemed like at one point in time, it came up that if you had like storage units, those were not exempt, but they weren't being charged. And I was wondering, is that still true? And can we change that so that we're getting some money off of those too?
Yeah, I would have to check with our zoning administrator to confirm that, and then also pull the code language on that and look at that a little closer on park dedication fees, this land subdivision, and what that relates and compared to our fee structure, where we charge $2,500 base fee plus $2,500 per acre. So I don't have the answer tonight on the ins and outs of what's charged or not, but I think that, I can follow up with our zoning administrator and look at the city code for that to see if there's opportunity for clarification if it's one way or the other, so that it's a little more clear on the commercial piece what we're charging.
Yeah, because I guess that's the thing I'm just looking for, is to see that if there's, the possibility to collect revenue, how do we do that? What's the process?
Yeah, I brought that up earlier, Tim, and so I think they were still looking at they were still kind of talking about it.
Right.
Any other questions about that?
All right, and then we'll just briefly go over the Lake Association, or lake budget. And again, this is something new. This is to start a process to have the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission review budget requests, and hopefully develop a process moving forward so we can make sure the lakes are being maintained and cared for, and have the city have a role in that. So what you see here, I do have the budget requests that were submitted. I did remove one line item, which was $10,000 for boat inspections for the Lake Association. My understanding as I transition into this as well is that there are some funds available, as mentioned during the open forum, for lake and pond improvements. And so trying to figure out, what are eligible expenses that the city will contribute towards, if it's, these different treatments that you see here, if it's boat inspections, figuring out what that process would look like. I know from a recreational and park side of things, having the lakes are a big asset, draw people into the community, and there's a huge recreational piece to this. So I don't think it's your role to, review every single treatment that's going to be done and approve that per se, but I think in general, city's perspective from your, Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission of the financial support and contribution that you'd like to see from the city, and what that might look like, and I think there's, this is the first look at this, and I think we'll have to figure out there's a lot of details to work through on this. The Stormwater Management Fund is not, a fund that I oversee, and a lot of this is funded through that. So we don't currently have a lakes budget. We have a lake improvement fund, which is revenue from your boat club. So we do have that available. And that's your boat club rentals down at Lakeside Memorial Park. So we do have that little bit of revenue coming in there. But just starting the conversation, this is again new to myself as well, and the commission, of talking through funding the lakes in general. So any initial thoughts or comment?
I think we just need to start with, why did we reduce it? Help us with that process. Came up earlier.
So like I said, this is new to me, so I'll do my best to navigate through this. And if I don't have all the questions today, and if you don't, we'll have to circle back. But I took out maybe it can go back in, the $10,000 for inspections, just because speaking with Dave Adams, our Public Works Director, who does manage the Stormwater Management Fund, just need to figure out if the city should, if that's an expense we would pay for, or if the city was able to do that for managing the weeds and doing the weed harvesting. So took it out, but it could probably go back in. It wasn't an intent to reduce the budget. It was just, is that an eligible expense or something that we would want to cover?
Left it in for Clear Lake.
Yeah, and I apologize. I don't know if it should be in there or not, and I can put it back in. That's fine.
It's in there with watercraft inspections. at
Which one am I,
launches.
so
Forest Lake Association.
maybe I didn't take it out, so.
Watercraft inspection at launches.
So backing one step backwards here, Public Works Director said that the city has always budgeted $62,000 a year for several years. In 2021, the city did add on $10,000, and I think that was the first time the city had done that. So that's the history that I know. It's always been $62,000.
Why was the 10,000 added?
City council added it because they were City council added it based on a request from the Lake Association.
So can 10,000 be put back in by request from the Lake Association?
Possible. I mean, yeah, we will consider it, sure.
I mean, it seems that the lake is improving. And I hate to see it start going backwards because we added it here and took it out there and we'll stick it back here.
Yeah, and I think that's the direction to go, is what is the amount per year that the city contributes, because there's the Forest Lake Association, the Clear Lake Association, and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. And so all three entities will need, are looking for some financial support from the city. So, if we have $72,000, for example, for this year, how is that divided out amongst the three entities, or what are those projects? So that's part of the conversation to figure out, what, I don't have the answer today, but is it a certain dollar amount, and how do we determine what goes where and for what reason? And I think that's part of our conversation tonight too.
I guess that's what I'm just thinking about is as a member of that Lake Association, I think, Jerry, you can kind of correct me, but it seems like the goal was to have a 6-foot clarity by 2040 or something. And, I clearly can notice an improvement in the lake in the last few years. And I guess I would hate to see that go backwards just because shuffling money around.
Now, the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District, they're a taxing entity themselves. So does the city provide additional funding for the watershed district?
I guess I am not the expert in that, so I don't know for certain, but I know that, we have partnership, and I don't know if we give them, fund anything. So I think it's figuring out maybe a dollar amount if you think you don't want to go backwards. If you think $72,000 is a good number for 2022, then maybe it's a separate conversation to start figuring out, allocating the dollars and reviewing as a commission what is being spent, what those funds are being spent on.
Well, I think that watercraft inspections, you either pay for it now or you pay for it later. So the inspections haven't obviously prevented Forest Lake from, avoiding many things, but hopefully as new aquatic invasive species come around, that the inspections will slow them down or stop them from being introduced. So I'm in favor of, well, I have a bias here as president of the Clear Lake Association that these inspections are important.
That's good feedback, because I feel like, as we work through this to see if we can identify, maybe the city will contribute to treatments and boat inspections, and come up with a little list of what are things that are important to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission and the city to help support and fund. And maybe we can get that little list of what that would look like, and then figure out dollar amounts annually.
So who monitors the inspections, that number? Was that your number, Jerry, or does that come from the city, or where does that number come from?
I believe they work with the DNR.
Are you talking about the cost of the?
There was that number you had of 3,000 boats launched.
3,296, 3,261.
3,261 boats were launched at Lakeside Park last year.
And is that an increase from the previous year?
I don't know that,
Okay.
but we're on track this year so far to meet the same numbers. So the number of boats coming into Forest Lake is not decreasing. It's a significant issue that the Downtown Redevelopment Committee is going to have relative to how do you handle all these boats down at Lakeside Park and downtown. It's a big problem, to be honest with you. So
I mean, if the lake is still being used like that, and probably will be used more, I would say to combat any other issues, we still certainly can't go backwards with the money that's being dedicated to improving the lake.
well, that's kind of what I've been advocating for the last year and a half, 2 years with city and city council, is that, yes, it is a lot of money, however, it's used wisely, and the deterioration of a lake has an impact to the city from a recreational standpoint, from a standpoint of revenue to businesses. So there's a lot of things that enter into it. So, and in 2021, we are budgeting to spend over $200,000 on the lake for improvements and or treatments and boat inspection, stuff like that. And that was on that chart I gave you in April. So it's a contribution that we felt is important for the city to provide just as a park. I mean, it's a big park, and you fund other things at parks. So, I mean, that's how we view it, as a partner with the Watershed District, the Lake Association, the city, as 3 partners maintaining that lake.
Could we push this back up to 72,000, but then have the conversation with the associations and maybe include Dave in that, and talk about what's needed and who's going to do it? Because if there's some things on this list potentially that the city could do, then that may adjust this funding level back down if the city takes responsibility for that. And so I see the value in having a conversation between the 2 groups to see where this would potentially land. But for now, earmark it, put it back up to 72,000. I think the other thing we need to look at too, because this is new for us, is some type of a process for budget submissions and approvals, and then some type of report back out as to how those funds were used. In this particular case, we're seeing the line items, but we don't typically see that for other things. So it just gives us, because this is newer for us, it gives us the opportunity to make sure that we're having the conversation, we're investing one of our most valuable resources appropriately, and that we have a process for it. And then again, like I said, if we need to adjust it, we can, but for now, can we move it back to 72, have some meetings and reevaluate?
I think that works on my end if that works for you.
I agree. What I don't want us to get to, I like what you're suggesting. I don't want this commission to get into the position where we think we're going to say, Jesus, Eurasian milfoil herbicide treatment more important than curly pondweed, right? Because we're not
Right.
experts in any of that. I
Right.
like that idea of kind of understanding kind of those big buckets. But I just want to stay away from any of that kind of conversation that we're not have.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Didn't they tell you when you join this commission that you have to go to Eurasian milfoil class? Yes, you'll be certified.
Well, I'd like to, 2 years ago, the city gave $15,000 to the Clear Lake Association for Eurasian water milfoil. The county gave the association $15,000, and the association put in $17,000 for a whole lake treatment of Eurasian water milfoil. And we have had 3 subsequent surveys that have produced no Eurasian water milfoil. And we've had, and the anecdotal evidence of everybody who uses the lake can't find any. So it was, we're grateful to the fact that the city was willing to fund that. And we don't have the pressure that Forest Lake has, but we have, for our size, we get a ton of boats, and it's gotten with the quarantine and people not, going inside, you can't buy a jet ski. So everybody is using the lakes, and I've never seen anything like it personally. So it's very busy.
Good. We'll bump it up to the 72,000 with the subsequent meeting to talk a little bit more about budget process, request approvals, and all of the other items related to that.
Does that have to be by a motion? Does that have to be by a motion, or can you
No,
just-
I put this discussion just
Okay.
to have that workshop conversation on it. So with that, if there aren't any other budget questions, I can pull up a report and get it to you guys probably tonight, so that if you have any other, to see the full budget, how you're wanting to see it, that's fine. I wanted for conversation tonight just to really focus on line items of what our 2022 requests will be. I don't think anything super significant, so that I can get that imported for, to go to the city council here soon for requests. So if you don't have any other significant budget items, these are the line items of importance, and then I'll send out the full detailed report, and I can get you some year-to-dates, more specific if you want to know. But really, we just, are operating from a programs and a maintenance standpoint. It helps us with what's needed for the community, so.
I do just want to echo, Karen had sent an email late this afternoon. Just want to echo that she was also interested in the bottom line, as we've talked about here too. So I just want to go on record to make sure that we covered that. And then her other question is on another topic, so.
Okay.
I can provide one more piece of clarification on the Clear Lake Association's request for $6,000. The Washington Conservation District provides the inspectors, they pay them. We end up paying the Conservation District for additional hours of inspection. They provide a certain small number of hours, we buy the rest. And that's, this year it was $5,680. And the association requested $6,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we are now moving on to the park event permit application for the tracker boat.
All right, so chair members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, we are in the regular agenda, so these are items that are seeking action tonight. Before you is a park event permit application for Saturday, July 31st. And this is for Tracker Boat Forest Lake Fishing Tournament. As provided, most of this is going to take place obviously on the lake. They're gonna, maximum of 50 boats will go out onto Forest Lake for the fishing tournament. The park request is maybe 75 plus people, just as they do the weigh-in portion of the event. They're gonna have a tank in the park, bring the fish in, do the live weigh-in and release. So it could be up to 75, plus people throughout this weigh-in process, but primarily this will be out on the lake. The event is from 6 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. I did note in a staff memo that similar to the powerboat races, there are going to be several boat trailers. They are not letting everybody launch from downtown. They will be using all of the public launch areas in the community, but they are letting about 20 boats launch from Forest Lake. So the city is happy to help with reserving a small portion of the parking lot for additional trailer parking for the event, similar to the powerboat races, leaving at least half of the parking lot available for park users and people for the local businesses. So with that, just looking for a motion to approve the park event permit for Tracker Boat Forest Lake Fishing Tournament for July 31st.
So move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? If they do have the food truck, they know that they are required to do their own permits for that, right?
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so next on the agenda is the Castlewood Golf Club House. Just looking for my paperwork here. Okay.
Tonight, we have Castlewood Golf Course facility improvements and listed here on our agenda, and I did provide this as separate cover tonight. Just wanted to make sure I got all the details from our last meeting. So we did meet and talked about this last month on June 16th. I brought to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission this as a discussion to see if there was any interest in putting up a facility to serve as the new clubhouse at Castlewood. And from that discussion, there were just a few questions for more information. So I've provided that information tonight, and I'll go through this with you. So just the current facility, we're currently operating our golf course out of the existing pro shop. It's a fairly small building. Just for reference, I included some pictures. So we have a staff office. It's just a little corner of the building. And really, there's no room for storage or anything, so extra merchandise and inventory is really the first thing you see when you walk in the door. So it's a really small facility, put up in 2007. With this facility, the pro shop, it's not on city property, so the city does pay $3,330 in rent annually for the ground lease for utilizing our building on Stella's property. And we are currently responsible for maintaining the pro shop that's there. So anything that needs to be done will be at our city's expense. So just again, we've been operating out of the pro shop for several years. But we do have an opportunity before us, and the city purchased a new building that will be constructed this fall, whether it's at Castlewood or somewhere else in the city. It will be constructed this fall. And so the facility could be the new clubhouse at Castlewood Golf Course with a larger building. There's no intent to change any of our food and beverage options, which I know was one of the questions. We wouldn't be doing any restaurant style food or anything like that. All that operation would be the same. We also do have in our contract that if Foursome Golf Management, who's running the operations, let's say they wanted to add a small frozen pizza again or whatever that might be, that does need a city approval anyhow. So we do have that in place as well. The building that we have is 3,200 square feet. It's a single-story structure. And then there is an awning out the back where we could have some tables and chairs for sitting and viewing the golf course, which would be nice for a little shelter if it's raining or just as you're waiting for your kids in a golf league or something similar. So part of our last conversation in June was, with a larger facility, what could that potentially mean for the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission from a recreational and program side of things. So we talked about cross-country skiing and snowshoes rentals. Really, there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think there's a lot of excitement with what we could offer. We certainly could reach out to community partners for different programs and activities. It also is a larger building that if all of a sudden a storm pops up or it rains, you got shelter for people that have been on the golf course. So from a recreation side of things, there's definitely a larger building would provide the opportunity for year-round use and some new recreational activities to now make our park golf course more community-based. We can invite other groups out there. And that also could, benefit is it could provide an additional source of revenue. So for our course operations, as we talked about earlier, we have the guaranteed $50,000 profit to Foursome Golf Management. And if we have other sources of revenue through year-round use, that could really help us try to get to that self-sustaining model where we're self-sustaining and not having to help fund that anymore. So it's an opportunity for some additional revenue, which I think is really important. A couple of questions came up in June. One of them was management. Would Foursome Golf Management, or who would manage this, was one of the questions. If we had year-round activities, Foursome Golf Management would be, is interested in that. We did put language in our contract. We have a 5-year contract, so that's through December 31st of 2025. And we do have language in there that if a new clubhouse or facility was added, we would negotiate our contract in good faith with Foursome Golf. So obviously today we don't have exactly what that would look like, but there's definitely interest and they could manage that on a year-round basis, depending on our programs we would offer. So cost of the building, building and construction's paid for, so it's not coming out of our park dedication fund or capital fund. So the only potential cost would be if any future additions to the inside, but we would have to plan for that as part of capital, just like any of our other park facilities. But currently, if we put the building up, we can operate out of that as is with very minimal work needed. It's just it'd be a larger open space, essentially. Community support. I know that Foursome Golf Management did put out a petition at the golf course just to gauge some interest, and they did have over 170 people sign in favor of that. I did read through some of the comments. A lot of them are really excited about let's build this, and staff, space for staffing and just a nice amenity in addition to the course that could provide year-round use. So strategic plan, I looked at that as well, and we looked to see how that aligns with what we've been talking about. So it obviously, aligns with items listed in the 2040 comp plan and things that we've discussed as a commission to provide additional recreational amenities, and especially that year-round use. I know there's not a lot to do here in the winter, so if we can find ways to bring in a community event out there or any other programs and activities, I think that really aligns with our goal for something for everybody. It's not just a golf course and using for that need. So I think it opens the door for a lot of opportunity there and aligns with our planning. So tonight, it is an action item. Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission needs to make a determination if the facility should be for Castlewood Golf Course to serve as a new clubhouse, a larger space, knowing that there could be opportunity for year-round use and programming. I didn't put it in here, but I also did meet with management at Stella's. I know that was one other question, is are they aware? Are they, comfortable with moving forward? And they're aware, and they're, as long as we continue with our food and beverage is more the prepackaged, they have no problem with us. That was one of the things they wanted to make sure is we're not a restaurant. And, I think they'd be excited and open to seeing people come out to Castlewood year round. And we also talked about some potential partnership opportunities. So there's some excitement there on how we can continue to partner and work together. So again, there's a lot to be discussed, but we said we will continue the conversations with them and look for ways that it can be a win-win for both parties. And so that has been accomplished as well. So with that,
How is the building being paid for?
The city already paid for that, so it's not out of park dedication funds or anything, so
Oh,
it has been paid for. I was just gonna finish up, I have, I think I can pull these up here, but I do have a couple drawings of the building as well. And what the plans are, and then just a overview, the landscape plan, just so you guys can see the aerial view of where the clubhouse will be placed. And the other change is the golf cart storage area. That would be moved closer over to the clubhouse. So we would remove, obviously that would move over as well. So I can pull those up on my screen in a minute.
so
Yeah.
the golf part of it is, with this building, how much space is not being used by golf that would be for potential other activities?
So with the inside of the building, until we determine specific programming, so this building would be suitable if we wanted to bring in golf simulators, for example. We would have room to bring in 3 of them if that was part of the programmatic side of the discussion. So there would be a dedicated area for that, but if we don't want to do that, really it's a big open room, and we can figure out if, obviously restrooms would be on the interior, so there'd be that. Otherwise, we could leave it as a larger open space. I think the really only need from a golf course perspective is a standard counter. There's gonna be one counter to operate, point of sale, and then where they buy your snacks and your grab and go items. I think the intent is to have just one person staff that. So it's not, you're not cooking off on the side. It's one person, you come into golf. So really just a counter. I think there's one storage closet. So some of that inventory and merchandise. But really, a lot of it could just be an open room with tables and chairs that you can move and relocate, or have it pretty open, so we can be flexible with the use inside there. But again, those interior details are things that we could talk about of what that might look like. That's the original.
And have you spoken with anybody that's interested in doing year-round stuff? I mean, that would be interested in doing, snowshoes and cross-country skis and things of that nature?
I have had a brief conversation with the Forest Lake Area Community Education. Currently, we're partnering them this summer with activities in the park, and I think that's been a great partnership. They do a lot of programs and activities, and I think, one idea that came up was like teaching a survival course. It's Minnesota winters, and come on out, and, that could be a space where they could go out and have their little kits and teach that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in partnership with groups in the community. There's also companies that run the snowshoeing and cross-country ski rentals that we could partner with, where they run the portion side, have the facility to lease or rent or whatever that may be. I think those are all to be determined, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for groups to come in and partner with the city. From a city perspective, we could have the opportunity to run a small community event, or, some activity out there where it's like indoor, outdoor. Some people like the cold and some don't. So it'd provide an area where we could do that. Luminary walk through or trail through the park and the golf course would be kind of cool. So a lot of program options and opportunities. Haven't gone down that path, but brainstorming ideas, I think there's a lot that we could do there.
But we're not crossing that bridge tonight.
No.
Tonight's bridge to cross is whether or not we want the facility. A future bridge to cross is what types of activities would we conduct within that facility if we had it, right?
I just
Yeah,
think,
correct.
I think that this is a great opportunity for the golf course and for the city of Forest Lake and for all the residents. You look at the dinosaur park was constructed, and people go out and use that. Lakeside Park, we redeveloped that also. And as Forest Lake keeps growing, I think it's a great asset to have.
I do too, and we actually had it as we called this out as a bullet in our 10-year plan under new recreation amenities. We have a bullet that says, build a new clubhouse for Castlewood Golf Course. So it seems to fit, not that we can't change that, but one question, will we be responsible for demolition of the current building? Do we own the current building, just not the land?
Yeah, we own the building, we do not own the land, and no, the city Public Works would take
Oh,
it down. So it's
Not
not a
that it
cost to
costs
any
a
of your
lot.
budgets or anything like that.
Jason into it in the spirit.
Yeah, it's not that substantial of a building, it'll come down pretty quickly.
Karen had questions.
Yes, let me just look here. She wanted to confirm that the cost for the proposed clubhouse would not come from the park funds. So I just want to go on record asking that question.
Sure, I'll do that. Yeah, so as Jamie said, the building has been purchased, the erection of the building has been purchased. It's the finishing off of the inside that we still have to fund, but we wouldn't fund that out of park dedications funds. We'd try to do that through some off-season work for Public Works, could do some of that. And then any specialty work, like possibly putting in bathrooms, we'd probably have to contract out, but we'd have to find the money internally to do that. So no park funds, no park dedication funds.
She also was just clarifying, would there be a new agreement with the new owner of Stella's?
No, because the current agreement is with the landowner of Stella's. There's two agreements. One is for the use of the land that the current clubhouse is on, and the other agreement is a parking agreement where it allows us to use his parking lot. So that is a agreement with the landowner. So the new owner of Stella's he only owns the business, doesn't own the building, doesn't own the parking lot, doesn't own the land. However, as Jamie mentioned earlier, there are opportunities, and we've already had discussions this week with the new owner and their assistants to try to come up with some kind of cooperative ventures and agreements and whatever else we can, partnerships, that was the word you should use, yes. So no, we don't need a new agreement with the new owner. The new owner didn't seem to have any objections, but again, I think that it's up to Foursome Golf and the city and the new owner of the business to try to find some joint ventures and how we can all benefit from that building and year-round use. And I think that's the biggest plus for Stella's is that if we program that building for more than just the golf season, find some way to put more recreational opportunities or simulators or whatever they may be, that there'll be some natural fall over into the business.
I think the building is a great idea, and I think we should go forward.
I'll make a motion to approve the Castlewood Golf Course new clubhouse.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? I do have one piece of discussion I would just like to go on record on again. So as I've mentioned in the past, I've talked about this as being a good opportunity to bring people into the community and to keep people within our community instead of forcing them to go outside of the community looking for activities. So I did do a little research on social media. It looks like every winter there are inquiries about things to do in Forest Lake. So this past January, someone asked about cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. There were 18 comments responded to that post, and nobody recommended they stay in Forest Lake. In fact, people referred them to places as far away as Maple Grove. So again, I think there's some potential here. Another posting was titled, "Looking for Outdoor Fun," and there were 10 responses to this one, and nobody mentioned Forest Lake as a place to do things for outdoor fun in the winter months. Yet another posting was looking for cross-country skiing lessons. Of the 6 responses to this one, nobody recommended Forest Lake, and most of the people said, if you find a place that offers lessons, please pass that along because I'd be interested as well. We also had a recent posting just asking people what they would do in the winter, what types of activities are here. There was a lot of feedback, wish list of activities that could occur, which would warrant itself to this facility, which I did capture. And when we talk about future activities in the winter, it might be a good opportunity to bring that up. So I wanted to just share that as I too support this as an opportunity, not only to provide additional activities, but to also keep people within the community if they would like to be within the community. And I'd love to see a post that says, go to Forest Lake for your activities. So just wanted to bring that up. You mentioned, you already addressed the other question and concern that I had, which was on Stella's and whether or not we've reached out. I know we heard from Max last time, so I'm glad to hear that you did reach out to the new owners of Stella's on that particular piece. Other than that, I think could provide some good opportunities.
Yeah, and just to let you know the next steps here, we still have to go to the Plan Commission for their approval. They were a little hesitant the last few times we've been there. That'll be next week, I believe. We'll try to get to them, and then we'll finally go to the City Council within a few weeks with their budget discussions and see if we can get their permission to move forward. I do think it's important, and Jamie said earlier, that this building's a good opportunity for recreation and new opportunities, but it's also a way for us to get out of subsidizing the golf operation. The more we can get in the plus side and not have to budget every year $50,000 possible dollars, that $50,000 could go somewhere else.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Hearing no other discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. But more to come on this one. All right, so then we are moving down to staff updates. So we've got the Forest Lake Senior Community Center.
All right, so I will introduce to you guys here. We have Jill Green, as I mentioned earlier. She is helping, working with the city as our temporary senior center coordinator. So she's played an integral role of helping the city transition operations through a global pandemic and the ins and outs that go with that, and really trying to get the doors back open. So she's done a great job in a short period of time. Now is an appropriate time to get her here to share some of the updates and the work that's being done and kind of where we're going. And with that being said, hopefully she'll answer some other questions people might have had. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jill.
Hello. So just a quick rundown, I guess, of what we've done so far. We opened May 10th as a soft opening, and we did a few activities just to get people in the doors. And we're currently in phase 2. We started that in July. So cards are back, and we're doing bingo and the basic activities. We're getting quite a few people in. I'm not sure what the numbers were before, but there's a lot of people in that building. The parking lot is packed. Usually 3 days out of the week, it's pretty busy. And we're moving into our phase 3, which is fully opening September 1st. And then we're having a grand opening on October 13th from 2 to 5. And yeah, it's going well.
All right, thank you, Jill. If anyone has any questions, otherwise, I know running the senior center operations under the city and through the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, it's pretty normal to see that for a lot of communities from a recreation standpoint. So Jill and I and other city staff have been meeting on a weekly basis to do some of the transitional items, administrative pieces of how things were and how they will be now. So we're still working through that. So part of that is also filtering this through the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission and finding how we can help and assist in the operations, especially from the programs and events side of things. I think, the grand opening event, I think, is a great idea. I know, and I can talk with Jill a little bit more, but you guys have always had some really good ideas for different events and activities. So I think that's one good example to help provide some ideas, resources, and be a part of that, working with Jill. So she probably won't be at every single Parks Commission meeting, but periodically to provide updates, and certainly it'll be fun to have her to work with and help bring some more senior rec programming to the community and make it a lively facility. So thank you, Jill. Any questions for Jill? Questions?
Just to follow up on the building itself, senior building like the golf course and Fenway Fields all have been pretty much left alone for all these years, so we're still, like those other two things, we're playing catch up with some of the maintenance and some of the improvements that need to be made. The basement is being painted, the basement's being recarpeted. We're cleaning up the place. Not that it was negligent, but it just needs improvement. So just be patient with us. We're going to need to go through all of those things as well, just like we did with the Fenway Fields, just like we've done with the Castlewood building. I think we're making a lot of progress, and that's thanks to Jamie and to Jill, particularly in the senior center. And it seems like we're starting to get all of these things aligned the way they should be. So that's all.
Thank you. I don't have any other updates tonight, so if that, you can turn it over to commissioner updates if anybody has any.
Any updates from anybody here?
Can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry, I don't want to. Jerry was here, he reminded me that I recommend that the commissioners monitor the downtown plan process that's going on, because I'm sure that will involve your lakefront and what's going to go on there. So if you can't actively be there, I would recommend that you try to kind of stay a little bit, see what's going on with some of the presentations and things, because it will eventually impact your lakefront and the parking there and things like that. So I'm sure you'll have a chance to get to be a part of that review process and input process as well as we go along.
When the survey is closed, will we see results from that?
I'm sorry, one more time?
The survey that was posted for that, will we see the results of that?
Yeah, I'm sure. We have there's a downtown committee meeting on Monday here, so
Okay.
we'll see what kind of update we get from them on Monday.
And I'll pass along any resources that I get as well and start getting you guys engaged. They're just, the downtown committee group was at Arts in the Park last night for their first community engagement session there. So I think that was great to have them there, and you'll get an opportunity to be involved in that process here soon.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.